bring up Baby Got Back though again. What's up with Nicki Minaj's ripoff of that song? 50s and 60s still work. This is my opportunity to make them love the DJ. I love cutting into songs from genre and era to different genre, different era.
Believe it or not, it's already Thursday, the day after Hump Day. You know what that is? It's Mobile Music Thursday. So I'm really excited about our guest this week. A person that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a few years now, extremely talented, and is based in Canada. Yes, and I feel like I grew up in southern Canada, growing up in North Dakota. So I feel rather kinship to my friend up there in Canada. He works in the Western Manitoba areas where he's based out of, but he serves Canada from coast to coast, anywhere that wants his unique style of entertainment. He's a wedding entertainment director, and the name of his company is Special Request Weddings. He's been at this for 17 years and is extraordinarily talented, and I'm really excited to get his take on music, what he chooses, what he plays, how he plays it, and how he approaches it, and shares with us. Dave Ternier from Canada, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Jason. How's things tonight?
Oh, absolutely awesome. Yeah, especially awesome because I have you on the show.
We'll see about that.
Oh, please don't run away. Please don't. I won't ask anything that hard.
I'll hang around for a few minutes.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Awesome. Well, welcome to Mobile Music Thursday, where we talk about music and how we handle music. Because even though I know that you add so many special touches to the experience that brides and grooms have, when it comes down to the music starting at the party, the music has still got to be great. No matter how good a job we did leading up, we still have to be tuned in and playing what people want to dance to. It's still a huge cornerstone of the party. So I want to start by asking you, like, when you go into a wedding, and I know that weddings, I mean, they really vary depending on the clients and the people and that sort of thing. But starting from an overview, and then we'll kind of get in more specifics, what is your kind of general game plan that you like to look when you look at playing a wedding event, when you go into it in terms of your music selection or how you're going to program that night?
My game plan has to do with obviously who the couple is, as someone alluded to earlier, that everybody's different. But one of the great things I've discovered over the last few years as I've really gotten involved in emceeing is the ability to learn and discover who not only the two of them are, but their guests are before the dance even starts. So I use that to get a lot of direction from. I live somewhat out in the country, kind of close to the city, so my events do vary from, this past weekend I was playing in a really small town hall. For further definition, there are 4 houses left in the town.
Okay.
So my approach there to music, as the bride and groom pulled up on a John Deere tractor, obviously big queue, versus maybe doing a wedding in downtown Winnipeg or something like that.
It's probably going to be all hip hop.
Yeah, nothing but turned off, but I think I played it like 10 times. So yeah, really learning who the families are and this type of thing, judging what they've chosen as far as the introduction music to come into their cake cutting, first dance, that type of thing. If it's all country music, I know that I can probably expect to go that direction, although as we all know, of course, sometimes brides and grooms are one way and their guests are a completely different way. So
sure.
I would say my overall approach has to do with, where and who, and I will say that I do rely fairly heavily on the standards for probably the first hour of a wedding, unless I am in, downtown suburbia and really going for the new stuff right off the bat.
Okay, what are standards? Give me some examples of what standards are for you.
Standards for this region, you know what? 50s and 60s still work surprisingly well. Dion, Beatles, Chubby Checker, not as often as I used to. But getting into things like that, the classic rock. 70s dance, 80s dance is still huge, but of course, as we know, it's making away a little bit with the generations for the 90s revival. It's currently
right. More moms and dads now are grooving to the 80s, to the oldies.
Yeah, exactly. So, quite typically out in this area, I will start out with either a couple of country or a couple of classic rock, and then kind of feel things out from there. And hopefully by that point in time, I've gotten some actual vocal direction from somebody coming up to ask me for something, or who knows what. So
Okay, so vocal direction is something that I get various opinions from DJs both on and off the show in terms of requests. Sometimes DJs treat requests like a barometer. If I'm getting a lot of requests, it means I'm not really tuned into this crowd and they're just sitting thinking of songs to play. If I'm not getting a lot of requests, it means they're just grooving on what I'm laying down and we're kind of tuned in together. So how is it that, and so there's both kind of like the negative and the positive to requests, and it sounds like it's a real big positive for you. So how is it that you make that work for you?
I will flat out tell people, and wedding guests as well, particularly brides and grooms, if I can play the night 80% requests, I will. The reason they've hired me is because the order of the songs matters so much.
Mm-hmm.
The selection is one thing for sure, but what we do as a mobile DJ that really I think is more important than the selection is how we program them, the order that we're playing them in order to move certain groups of people on and off a dance floor.
Kind of like it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's not what you play, it's how you play it.
100%, absolutely. So my approach to taking requests is in an overwhelmingly positive way. I look at the opportunity of somebody coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Dave, can you play so and so and so?" That is an opportunity for me to. This may sound rather rock starish, but this is my opportunity to make them love the DJ.
Yeah.
This is my opportunity to make them go home that night and go, "That guy was awesome. He played what I wanted. He made me feel good."
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a song I'm not going to play, always take it with a positive. And, probably a line that I've used more often than not, and again, it's not the line, but it's how you use it, is, "Jason, I'd love to play that song, but it's only going to be you and me loving it here.
Yeah, right?
What's your second choice?" As opposed to saying no.
Right. Everybody, no is just a good way to start an argument.
Absolutely. I took a little, myself and a colleague took some really brief, and it was far too brief, but some improv training a couple of years ago. And I remember one of the things that came out of that was, I think the term is to never close the door, never, always look for somewhere to go, never block, never stop. And as little as that one evening was, that impacted how I treat requests in a little bit of a way, because I find that if I'm getting a lot of requests, quite often I've played something and that's triggered a memory within somebody dancing, and they'll go, "Oh, hey, I'll be right back." And they come to me and say, "Hey, Dave, can you play this song too?"
Right.
And I think that what I play, if I'm doing it right, will actually inspire more requests as opposed to the other way around.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that is a really interesting take that I haven't heard on requests around it. That it actually inspires people to think of more songs that they want to dance to and party to and things like that. And so,
Yeah.
so it sounds like just because you get requests, you're not necessarily just playing every single thing somebody throws at you. Especially with saying like, you and I are the only ones that are going to love this song. How about, can you think of something else? Like, I really want to do something for you. Kind of thing is what that really communicates, and that's really a really great way to handle requests. That's terrific. One thing I want to ask you about, you said a little bit earlier in the interview, is that you say you'd spend a lot of time getting to know the couple, and that really informs you about music. Do you have a set of questions or that you go through with your couples in terms of learning their tastes, the tastes of their friends, of their family, and that sort of thing?
I don't have a set list, so to speak. Throughout our planning, I will have asked them key questions to help them think of songs for special moments in their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So by way of that, I discover what they're into a little bit. Things like what radio stations they listen to, what concerts they've been to, or what is your dream concert? If you could get to any concert in the world, what would it be? Is often a really great question. Because if you just ask somebody, who would you love to see in concert, or who have you seen, it's sometimes too vague. But if you say, if you could see anybody in the world, who would it be?
Sure.
Well, that's a pretty easy way, rather than asking who's your favorite artist. Well, gee, I don't know. Well, if you could see anyone in the world, who would it be? Oh, it'd be this guy.
Or who do you like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So
what if you get a response like, "I love Pink Floyd"?
I love
I would go to a Pink Floyd concert. So
I would,
what would that tell you, or where would you go from there?
well, I would probably ask if their group of friends is also into Pink Floyd. Is that
Hmm.
something that you and more than just yourself share, with family or friends, what have you? And in the case where now I just love Pink Floyd,
Hmm.
well, perfect. Let's tie it into cocktail or dinner if we can in a unique way. I'd have to brush up on my Pink Floyd knowledge, further than Brick in the Wall or the standards that everybody knows. But
Right, money.
yeah, absolutely. But I have used them during the dance before too. I haven't played the Brick in the Wall at a dance for a while, but 5, 6 years ago, it was a great moment. I don't remember the wedding specifically, but it was good.
Hmm. Yeah, if they're enthusiastic about it, it's an anthem. Definitely
Big
one of
time.
those. It's one of those what I would call like an anthem song. It's one of the things that I really like about the. Oh, now here I go. Here I'm going to go with like not remembering Fun. The songs that Fun have put out have been
Yes.
such great anthem songs, and I feel like they're really going to be able. We're going to be able to use those for quite a while because they are anthems. They're like you can march around the dance floor to them, kind of thing, and have a
Yeah,
unique place.
American Pie, that type of thing.
So you're playing. You're playing without requests, and you're inspiring, and encouraging more requests. And so how do you set up your music? Do you play music in sets? Do you play by theme and the lyrics? How is it that because we were talking about earlier? You also mentioned that it's not necessarily what you play as much as how you play it. So elaborate a little bit more on how you play it.
Um, Typically speaking, my overall approach is that I will move from genre and era to different genre, different era. I will use, I think, which is a pretty common thing, I'll quite often use slower songs to segue between genres.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing some 60s, 70s rock type of stuff and I want to get back into some new stuff, I'll probably transition with some dance music that might be in between that 70s, 80s rock into a 90. But I also love the creative control that we have to drop something completely unexpectedly if the moment fits. And I mean, as well as I do, we've had 20 seconds left, and you know what? In the moment, we think, nope, I'm going to change it, and you change the song to something completely different, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think being there in the moment with your crowd and with your guests is so, so important, to really dictate where I go with things. I mean, I'm people that have seen me DJ before or seen me in videos or whatever will laugh because I'm this rather animated individual singing along, hand clapping, foot always moving to the music because I don't want to become disconnected to what everybody else is feeling.
Uh-huh.
Because should I become disconnected, I may lose where I need to go musically, and I'll just start relying on, well, gee, what does this list say? What did I do this time? Well, that worked then, but it might not work with this bunch.
Sure. How do you know when you're describing that? Because that disconnected is more just kind of a feeling. It's not really a tangible. So how do you know when you've slipped or you're not really connecting with the crowd or that sort of thing?
Well, dance floor response, I suppose, would be the most obvious one, clearing of a dance floor, something like that. But I guess it's hard to describe, right? It's living in the moment for me is a tough thing to talk about because it's just something
Well,
I
and
feel
maybe a
so
better
much.
question, or something more revealing and more interesting, because it's like I think we've all experienced the moment where it's kind of like, okay, I'm not pulling them or keeping them. Okay, so where can I go, or how can I get back tuned in? So how do you tune back in to this group to be able to bring them back out and involve them and get them going again?
Um, Probably try to get myself back in the groove with them by going to a standard hook song that might really work depending on how the rest of the night's gone. Maybe we're going to go into Time of My Life, from Dirty Dancing,
Mm-hmm.
or one of those songs that gets people to engage not only in dancing but in something else as well, and feeling something and singing, which might lead them to come on up.
Mm-hmm.
Some method like that.
Sure. Okay. So kind of like going back, like throwing out some hooks in a genre that you've known as that's worked earlier in the evening, like this, like you're describing this couple that come in on a tractor. They generally like the crowd seems to be really resonating to country. So then throwing out some like really strong country hooks, like maybe Alabama song.
Fishing in the Dark,
Fishing in the
Chattahoochee, Dust on
Dark,
the
yeah,
Bowl, Brooks and Dunn, etc.,
that
etc.
sort of thing, or Boot Scoot and Boogie, something that'll be like, oh yeah, there's a country song we'd love to dance to
Yeah.
kind of get it back going. Let's shift a little bit and talk about some of those floor fillers. What are some of those kind of go-to hook songs from different eras that you really rely on, that really work for you in your area or your region? These are really regional songs. Before we started the interview, we were talking about "Wannabe" by the Spice Girls, and
Yes.
up in the Minnesota area where I am, which is like a little further south from Canada, not quite southern Canada where I grew up. But "Wannabe," it's popular and it's frequently requested, but it's not like a oh my god, it's "Wannabe," and everybody like rushes the floor for the song, like you were describing. Like it's kind of reached that level up there in Canada.
Yeah, it certainly does sometimes. The minute they hear that opening laughter in the song, it can be a magnet. You know, obviously it depends on the crowd, maybe not as strong a magnet as some, but Wannabe is certainly one of those tunes. What else from the 90s? Shania Twain seems to be enjoying a little bit of a resurgence again. You know, Any Man of Mine is one of those girl anthems
Yeah.
that if you can get the girls to dance, you'll probably get the boys to dance,
Yeah, they'll
right?
follow.
Things like Cotton Eye Joe. This past weekend, actually, one of the really great hooks in it was a request. It was
Is that
something
the
I wasn't.
Rednecks version, the Cotton Eye Joe?
Pardon me?
The Rednecks version?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this past weekend, I wasn't thinking of it, but somebody came up and requested it, and it ended up becoming one of the great hooks of that night. And it was Saturday Night Wigfield.
Oh, really? Saturday Night Wigfield. I haven't played that in forever. I used to play that in the 90s is when I
Yeah,
when I played
absolutely.
that. And it was I would sometimes it would be big and then sometimes it would be tepid. It was never like always guaranteed, but I liked it so much I always found ways to kind of fit it in, because if I had
Right.
momentum, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay, this is fun." And they would keep going with it.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But it's like, "Oh, now you got me excited. Now I'm excited to pull that out and try that one again."
Well, you know, it's one of those songs that has that really recognizable intro, right?
Dee dee da da da. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's all it takes. And with the right crowd, right? It just, yeah, love that tune. I don't play it much either, but I was certainly glad to hear it requested this past weekend.
Aren't those moments great where they come out and request that you're like, oh, I love that's a great song. Oh, what a great idea. They're going, oh boy, and you get all excited and like gonna put it out there and see what happens. And it's like you feel like you get a trophy when everyone else gets excited. You know? So that leads me to another question, which is something that I think is really, really important in what we do, is knowing where, because there is a hook song, but then there's knowing where the hook is in the song. So that if you mix, you don't mix past the hook. And I've heard you make reference to it a couple of times. So we talked about it with the opening of Wigfield, where she starts out with dee dee da da da, and then the song just punches in, and then also with the laughter on the beginning of Wannabe, which is a audible hook, like oh, it's Wannabe, where that's the trigger where they get excited. So what when you kind of audition songs or you listen for songs, what are you listening for in looking for the hook, or maybe some other examples of some songs where you can identify where the hook is in that song? Because I mean, I'm willing to cut off the intro of a song. I'll give you an example. Sir Mix-a-Lot, I Like Big Butts. Okay, that song, if I play it, I actually cut off all the dialogue at the very beginning of the song, and I punch in right at the beginning of I like big butts, and then it takes off like a rocket kind of thing. Because even though I played the beginning with all the talking before, and they're like, oh, they're anticipating, but it's like too long.
Right.
And
Well,
it's
like Bon
incomplete
Jovi's Living
if
on
I
a
come
Prayer.
in halfway. And so by cutting it off and just coming in at that, it's like, yeah, the big butt song, and then they go nutty for it. So how do you kind of look and figure out like where the hook is in the song?
Well, much like you're referring to, I guess, Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi would be a similar thing, right?
Yeah.
it's got this slow intro on it. Yeah, I liked. I'm not a mad cutting songs off from one to the other type of mixer. Depending, if it's a high school crowd, different story probably. But weddings is 90% of what I do. So
Sure.
I love cutting into songs. Getting past the whatever part. Bring up "Baby Got Back" though again. What's up with Nicki Minaj's ripoff of that song? Anyway, that's another
Yeah,
topic.
right. It's just like really bizarre. That is, yeah, okay.
Funny
Yeah,
it's like, 'cause I was
good
just
tangent
listening to it
here,
this
but
morning.
it's a song I don't even want to play because I hope it doesn't get popular because it's such a ripoff. It is such a ripoff. Like the whole it's like she's got a new rap pretty much over the same song.
Oh, yeah. Sorry to squirrel on you, but I was just listening to that song this morning. I happened to overhear it. Then you mentioned that. I'm like, God, are we that talentless?
Right. Like are all the original ideas gone?
Man. Anyway, to get back to your question, uh, there certainly are a lot of songs. I'd have to do some thinking about which types of songs that I do cut into. But absolutely, the intro in a song is not always required, depending if you're coming, if you're coming out of a slow song and it's got one of those intros that we don't much care for, I'll maybe use it rather than that harsh contrast of, slow moving to, I
Yeah,
like
to punch him in the face. Yeah. Right.
I actually another song that "Do You Love Me" Contours. That song trim the
Oh.
whole front end off.
All the talking, and now you
Yeah.
can really make him dance or
bring it
however
right
it goes.
into "Do You Love Me." I can't remember how the beginning part goes, but
Well, and
that's
that
the
has
song
that has a
cuts
softer that even that opening is softer than I Like Big Butts, and then like it like really punches in. That's a song that really punches in hard. So depending on how hard the punch is from the place in the hook. That you're coming in is something that's going to kind of dictate like kind of what you use and how much of that that you use, and then where you're gonna place it. Because if you're already in a fast set and then you punch into say the Big Butt song at that point, that would work because you keep momentum and then it'd be punching. You could actually
Right.
escalate the energy with the recognition of like, oh, I love this song too, and like it could be a lift even though your beats per minute are the same and the intensity is the same.
Right. I mean, here's an example. So if I'm, if I just finished playing, I don't know, "Twist and Shout" by the Beatles, and I'm going to play "Run Around Sue" next, I'm going to trim off all the beginning of "Run Around Sue."
Yeah.
But if I just played Louis Armstrong, "What a Wonderful World," I might let all the intro from "Run Around Sue" actually play.
Yeah. So I guess is the idea to make sure that all the energy doesn't drain out of the floor.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because we
Or,
don't want our
yeah,
dancers.
just
I mean, I've
slowly
seen it where I'm playing. I'll go into an intro and it'll be playing, and I'll have good energy going, and then I'll just watch it drain out of everybody on the floor. And if they're really polite, they just stay out there and kind of wait. And I can see them like waiting, like suddenly they're not at a dance anymore. They're waiting in line at a bus stop, and then like, okay, now the good part's coming. And so then they start dancing again, and I'm like, bad DJ.
Well,
I need to keep the energy consistent.
I got a feeling, Black Eyed Peas. Right?
What about that?
Well,
intro?
classic example, because its whole intro is something I often skip over a lot of the time.
Interesting. Now, see, that's really curious because that's one of the ones that I almost always play the intro of that dan 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 because there's an enthusiastic build on it, but of course it probably depends on the audience.
Well, that's true, and maybe I should clarify. I'll maybe have mixed that into my previous track a long ways, so that by the time we're getting, maybe that's what I should clarify with more. I'll play it, but it'll be subtly audible. Is that a term?
Yeah, I think it is now.
Subtly audible?
Dave Ternier just coined subtly audible.
Oh God. A guy I used to DJ with, squirrel moment for everybody. He and I had a moment at a high school dance where I referred to this rather yappy girl from student council as a peach queen.
A what?
And that's exactly what he said. And instead of calling her an expletive, as we were trying to set up and get going, I said peach queen. He said, "What?" I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea where it came from. Anyway, so he and I had this running joke then as we played events together that every event our goal was to create a new word And we refer to it as our destruction of the English language. So you've just
Outstanding.
participated in my destruction of the English language now with, what was the phrase?
I heard you say peach squeak.
Peach Queen.
Oh, peach queen.
Yes.
Peach queen.
So to everybody watching, a Peach Queen is one of those girls on student council who maybe thinks a little bit too much of herself and is maybe just, I don't know, you feel your hair kind of stands up in the back of your neck when you have to deal with her setting up at a high school dance or what have you. I'll let you fill in the rest of the description. But
Right.
she's a Peach Queen,
Yep.
and it's not the nicest term to call her, but because nobody knows what it's called, it doesn't matter.
You've invented it. It's code. It's now DJ code. It's like, oh, she's all flattered. He called me a peach queen. Yep, I sure did. Dave, this has been such a pleasure. Time always goes way too fast when we do these shows. But thank you so much for coming on to share your wisdom and your experience with us. It's truly valuable. I learned some new things, and this is really terrific. Will you come back? We can do this again because I'm sure you have more to share.
Absolutely. Can we do this in Vegas next week?
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if we'll be able to do the show in Vegas, but I look forward to seeing you in Vegas.
Sounds good. And to everybody else watching, see you in Las Vegas next week.
That sounds great. For Mobile Music Thursday, this is Jason Jones saying so long.